Good evening, y'all. Thanks for being here. So tonight is about small steps and big impacts. So in my bid to make this the smallest step possible and not take out too much of y'all's time, it's not the longest speech, but that's all right. I was scrolling YouTube on a random Tuesday night when I came across this. So that's the wing of a plane, and after about 2 minutes of suspense, there's a very violent snap. As the wing stops cracking and the machine returns to normal, I was a little bit surprised to hear cheering. Only cheering. Was it strange that a team of engineers who had just spent probably years of their life, thousands of man hours, few $1 million, something like that, turning one full Airbus A350 wing into two non-functioning wings? It was strange. Turns out they're load testing. They cheer not because they know that the wing breaks, but because they know when the wing breaks. They celebrate the failure because these failures are what determines success in the air. We too have stress limits much like this wing. Not material stress, perhaps, but physical, emotional, creative, or any number of stressors that happens when we push ourselves to the limits. Wanting to stretch our limits is admirable. It's just like a show of hands. How many of you have been told to push past your limits, perhaps by a teacher, a coach, or an overzealous friend? Significant amount of the room. But our limits are not the same. This culture of push, it's great, right? The idea of giving 110%, doing what nobody else could or has, becoming a version of you that you thought was unattainable ever. In fact, every image on this slide is from a day where I distinctly remember getting told that I had to go past what I could handle, that I had to give that 110%, maybe even 120. I remember distinctly ending up not as well off as I was before. I blew up on an erg, and I did not finish my AP Lit reading. Sorry, Ms. Gardner, I know she's listening. Unfortunately, as humans and not airplane wings, we're irreplaceable. That's the tricky part. There are human limits that we can't and don't test. We don't push our relationships to the breaking point just to say, okay, that didn't work. Let's start again, but this time slightly less intense. We can't set up a 400-pound deadlift, herniated disc, and go back to normal. Burnout, broken trust, catastrophic mistakes. Real life isn't a lab experiment, unlike any airplane thing, and we have breaking points that we just can't afford to go past. But we need to get close to those breaking points. That's where we build resilience. It's where we grow. It's where we extend our limits. If we shy away from our breaking points, we'll never know where they are. And under any real pressure, we'll become fragile. So how do we approach and discover our limits without risking irreparable harm? Earlier, I made the distinction between us and machinery. But that doesn't mean that we can't learn from parts like airplane wings. Decades of engineering has already built the roadmap for stress testing. So let's take a look at a few steps. 1. Identify goals for a test. Seems pretty clear. Create a realistic environment for your control test. Test it. Analyze the feedback. And if the results are unsatisfactory, do it again. And so, let's take the wing example. They aim for the wings to snap at about 100 for 50% of the load they'll see in the air. Okay, tests are done in controlled environments. This is in a lab somewhere. And 3, the actual wing snapping. Tests like these have thousands of sensors surveilling every aspect, and that data becomes the feedback that determines the success of the test and what they need to do better. And 5th, depending on the results, they might redesign, they might not. Good luck. Now, if we ship those principles to our everyday lives, we might get something that looks like this. First, we need to set clear goals. Tests are done for specific scenarios. What might fatigue look like flying at lower altitudes versus the standard cruising altitude? How does the breaking point compare to the usual load a wing might undergo? The same principle applies to testing ourselves. One of the most robust findings in psychological literature is that specific goals will lead to higher performance. For example, we shouldn't aim to merely communicate better. Aim to lead that meeting without awkward pauses. Don't aim to be fitter, rather aim to hike the Grand Canyon or up your bench. If we don't have a target, we're generating random stress, and pushing past our limits with random stress can only break you. Our minds and environments need to be set. This is the second point about creating realistic environments. It's proven that mental rehearsal will prepare you for real-world actions. Take this, for example. F1 drivers will run through every lap of every race in their heads, every corner, every chance to overtake. We can do the same before we test our limits. A realistic environment also comes through deliberate practice, which research says is key to expertise. If you've never tried something, how will you know what it looks like when you actually test it out? The third point is the actual test itself. In Airbus's lab, they gradually increase the force until a wing snaps. For our daily lives, this means that we have to put on the pressure slowly, gradually. Reckless leaps will only cause us to go far beyond the breaking points, into which irreparable harm begins to happen. Progressive overload is the key to our development. What we can feel when we're nearing our limits, and bit by bit, we can expand them to be able to go further, go faster, be stronger, be smarter. An extra 200 meters and an extra class, a slightly larger audience. Small, measured steps. The fourth point is feedback. Without feedback, there's no way to know how to improve. The goals from the step one and after you iterate are only based on feedback. Ask questions about your own performance. What did the people around you notice? What did the measures say? What does your Garmin watch or your Strava map say about what you did today? Reflect. Maybe journal. Anything that helps us understand what went wrong, what went well, what failed, and how you improve. Because at the end of the day, we're all about improvement and the small steps that lead to it. And so the fifth step, the process starts again. Our limits and growth are defined by this loop. We make adjustments, we push further, and we see where we are at the end of it. Put all this together, and we have the human stress testing blueprint. It's eerily similar to the one they use in engineering, no? We might just be giant machines. Goal, environment, test, feedback, and repeat. Following this cycle lets us explore and expand the edge of our capability without the danger of catastrophic events that we can't walk back from. So let's circle back to Airbus's cheering engineering team. If you think about it, in a way, every wing snap is a disaster. But it's not a disaster for the engineering team. Maybe for the finance team, but it's knowledge. Every wing snap is new knowledge, the same way every snap of ourselves is new knowledge. It's knowledge that keeps every flight safer. It's knowledge that helps us define our bounds. When we test ourselves with the same principle and mindset as Airbus's engineers, we learn these breaking points. And these breaking points ultimately define where we're strong, where potential growth might be. So take that goal you've been holding in your mind, the vague one that sounds something like be better, or my New Year's resolution that I'm gonna suddenly lock in and become way stronger. Think about what exactly it means to be better. Identify that goal, specify that goal. Think about how you'll explore what kind of scenarios you might be in, where that limit is really going to apply. And then think about that plan to test. When are we going to push our limits? Because at the end of the day, knowing your breaking point isn't a weakness. Your limit is not a weakness in the sense that it's the most you can do. It's necessary knowledge for you to succeed. Because only when we push at, but not past our breaking points, we will flourish. Thank you.